Appreciate you streaming on in here on Birds 365. You got Mac and Mac and a third voice to be heard from. Good to catch up with him again. And Johnny Mac, I got to clarify something before we get into all this Eagles stuff with Marc Farzetta. Farzy, I assume you don't have to commute to do the Farzy show?
Oh, no. I leave the studio. I come back. It's a big commute. Sometimes my wife's cats get in my way. So, yeah, it's a big traffic jam every once in a while.
That's what I figured. Now, you do have to do some commuting to get to the Eagles pregame show down at Ocean Casino.
Oh, right? Well worth the drive. Well worth the drive at Ocean.
Now, wait, the drive. Is the drive done with 4 wheels or 2? Because when I knew Farzetta, he was commuting every day on his bike. In friggin' February, with snow on the ground, he would go down to the basement of a building on 4th and Market Street and get rolling, get the helmet on and get rolling on his bike. You're not taking the bike all the way down the ocean, down to Jersey Shore, are you?
You know, in the summer months, maybe. No, never. I am not a cyclist, and I was never a cyclist. I was only a bike commuter. So that's the differentiation I'll make right there.
You did well, Farzy. When you climbed on that bike, I'd watch you pull out of the driveway going, damn, there's a man on a mission. He wants to get home. He's feeling like he means it.
I would hit Crown Chicken on the way home, and then I'd go home, watch some Mad Men. Maybe
Crown
rock
Chicken. That's good stuff.
Yeah, man. Rock out a little Madden, and then, hit the sack. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Very nice.
Now, sometimes, Mark, you're doing the pregame show from Ocean, and then I see you on the halftime show before I come on. You're back in the Farzy studio.
Yes. So we generally speaking stop the pregame show maybe an hour. Gives me about an hour to get home, which is about what it takes to get back from AC. I live right in Philly, and it's great. And I watch the game in my office, my home studio, and then I do the hit at halftime with you, John.
Yeah. Now, last week you stuck for halftime at Ocean.
Yeah.
So that's why I was wondering. It was a curveball. Like my beanie hat was a curveball to you.
It was great. It was a little curveball to me. But it was great. I don't like Evil Beanie. Evil Beanie doesn't pick the Eagles. No Beanie, you pick the Eagles.
Well, as a fellow, we all know. First thing to get cold.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
3 for 3 guys who need hats here. Yes. Whatever hat you can get your hands on.
Certainly.
The Eagles aren't covering anything up any of these days, Farzy. They're just putting it out there for everyone to admire. 12-1, best team in the National Football League, 2 weeks running blowouts where the backups are getting a chance to play. What more can the Eagles do to impress their fan base, the rest of the National Football League, or even themselves these days? What's left to prove?
See, that's interesting you say that, because one of the things I made a point of on yesterday's show was they're getting questions about the Super Bowl. I know Nick Sirianni was asked a question last week about the Super Bowl and impact of that and the idea of that, and other guys that have played in the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl on the team. Now they're getting questions about literally after the game in the Meadowlands. Hassan Reddick is being asked a question about whether or not he feels anybody can compete with the Eagles. So when you're getting questions like that, I'm sure it's difficult to try to keep that type of excitement or that type of expectation down. But the Eagles throughout this entire year, even when they had a perfect season going for themselves, have done a wonderful job saying each week is a season. We're not looking at it as an entire thing. We're looking at it as each week. Everything matters when it comes to beating the Giants, or it comes to this week beating the Chicago Bears, which is really important because we all know who's on the schedule after they play the Bears.
Yeah.
They have done a great job of staying focused.
If there were ever a letdown game, Mark, this is it, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
I mean, Dallas is on the horizon. Second of 3 consecutive road games. Chicago's the worst team in the NFC record-wise. They don't have much. They're rebuilding. First-year head coach. They're not doing a good job around Justin Fields. If ever there was a letdown game, this is the letdown week. But that's been the most impressive part of this team to me. They don't have letdown games. They just destroy these bad teams. Now, they've had some, they struggled a little bit in Houston. They struggled in Indy, Arizona, and they needed Cameron Dicker to come through. It hasn't been perfect, but look around at the rest of the league. Everybody has letdowns. The Eagles, their biggest letdown, they could arguably be 13-0 if not for a Quez Watkins fumble. What would we be saying if they were 13-0 right now?
Our heads would be exploding. And look, to answer that question and also comment a little bit more about what Jody asked as well. Like, this is a team you tell your grandkids about. Like, I don't know how the story ends yet, but if they were at 13-0 at this point in the season, I mean, you're certainly telling your grandkids about that type of team. But again, we don't know how it ends. If they were 13-0, I think we'd still be talking about what we talked about maybe a couple of weeks ago when I was on with you guys about how this is the type of team that if they're at the end of the year, do you go and you have everything clinched, home field advantage? Do you keep starters in? Do you play starters or do you sit them? So we would still be continuing that conversation, which, by the way, for the record, I was all about playing starters. Not a whole game, maybe not even a whole half, but at least keep them fresh, keep them sharp before the playoffs start. And I say, why not go for history? It's one thing to win a Super Bowl. That's great. Every year a team wins a Super Bowl. Not every year competes to be the greatest team ever, which is what you would have to term an undefeated team that wins a Super Bowl.
Right, and we're still going to have the conversations on how the Eagles are going to handle their business sitting or playing, depending on how much downtime it is before they play their first playoff game. Oh, that's going to be discussed plenty, on Birds 365 and everywhere else in Philadelphia once they do lock up absolutely everything. All right, so again, we're trying to ask questions when there might not be questions to ask because they're playing the way they're playing. Is putting Dallas Goedert back in the lineup going to be tricky business this week?
No,
damn, the offenses look good without that Goedert. Who needs Dallas Goedert at this stage? 35, 46. We don't need that Goddard guy.
Yeah, Jack Stahl and Grant Calcaterra.
They're game planning for Grant Calcaterra last week.
They're shaking right now in Chicago trying to game plan to stop that guy. But no, what's really, I mean, obviously the pass catching tight end that he could be is phenomenal. But the thing I always go back to with Goddard and John, I might have talked about this with you before, but I always go back to that. I think it was a week 2 game in Atlanta where they opened the dome. I think it was the year after the Eagles won the Super Bowl. And it was all of a sudden a bunch of guys got hurt. And there was talk about like the barometric pressure in the room or in the stadium and guys' hamstrings exploding. And Dallas Goedert wasn't able to play. Fast forward to the Tuesday locker room sessions after that loss to Atlanta. And Jason Kelce said we had to throw out half our playbook because Dallas Goedert got hurt because he wasn't able to run block for them. And he obviously wasn't going to be there in the passing game as well. So that made me think about how impactful this guy is, not just as a receiving tight end, but what he does as a blocker as well. And man, they have done a great job, this offensive line. Stahl, Calcaterra, these guys have really stepped up just in the run game aspect of what they've been able to accomplish without Dallas Goedert. But adding another weapon to Jalen Hurts in this offense, I mean, what more do you want from this team?
Yeah, that's the easiest decision ever for this offensive coaching staff. Thanks, Jack. You played a ton. Thanks, Grant. You held down the fort. Now, go over there. Dallas Goedert's back.
You got your good film. You got your good film down. Yeah.
But I did want to talk about injuries because, you mentioned Atlanta back in the day. Nobody wants to play on that MetLife Stadium turf. Nobody. It's a disaster. Players hate it. Jets and Giants, and they're going to change the turf again. We'll see how that's going. They got to do it every other week, those particular teams. So it's really difficult for them. Eagles had some injuries. Aaron Cepas is going to be out. They bring in Brett Kern. Who knows? Anthony Harris might be back. Reed Blankenship, but they got a break with Reed. They were very concerned that was going to be a significant injury. Looks like it's going to be week to week now. Lane Johnson went down. That's the biggest one, but it looks like he's going to be day to day. If there's anything that could derail this Eagles team, it's injuries. That was the biggest question. Get the hell out of MetLife Stadium as healthy as possible. And it looks like, other than Aaron Cepas and a couple weeks with Reed Blankenship, that part of it worked, is the injury bug. Is that the only question about this team? That's what the NFL's about, attrition.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Long season. Guys get banged up. It happens every single year, and it's certainly always a worry. And, I go back to the TO year where it was like, a lot of fans had the attitude, not that they were not interested, but a lot of fans had the attitude of, all right, this is great. Call me when we're in the Super Bowl, that type of thing. And then he gets hurt against, Roy Williams and the Cowboys. And you're like, oh, God, here we go. We can't have nice things. This is ridiculous. So, yes, that from that moment on, I've always been concerned about injuries and how injuries change the tide of a season. We all know that. But then again, this team is also the team of next man up. This is a team that has a lot of players that were still on that team that harken back to the next man up era, the underdog era, and they're obviously still using the underdog mantra. But if that team in 2017 could beat the powerhouse that was the New England Patriots with who they beat the Patriots with, I have no reason to lose faith. And Reed Blankenship, even though he got hurt now, we'll see the severity of it, how much time he might miss, although the outlook is a lot better than an IR stint now, which is great. He's a great example of it. This is a guy that literally made the club with the way he played in the third and final preseason game. And this is why you play the third and final preseason game. And more importantly, this is why you watch the third and final preseason game. Because Reed Blankenship went out there and
I can agree with you there.
What, in terms of him making the team there or just watching?
No, well, I think Reed, watching the third preseason.
Okay.
But, behind the scenes, Reed did a lot in practice, obviously. That's where you make the team. And he opened eyes early. Nick Sirianni talked about, he had some friends at Middle Tennessee State, and he knew about Reed Blankenship, and he showed up. And when the pads came on, the rare times they put the pads on, that's when he showed up because he's a physical guy. And they said, whoa, we might have something here. And he's played great. But now you're down to Kayvon Wallace. That's a concern. Now, last night, Kyler Murray goes down. Anybody else get those non-contact injury? You're going to hear all these narratives. You know it. You guys both know it because you talk to callers for years. It's not sustainable. You can't play the way Jalen Hurts plays. Look at Kyler Murray. He's out. He's a mobile quarterback. You constantly hear that. I think it's the dumbest argument ever. I'm going to be, you can't legislate injuries. Jalen does a good job avoiding big hits. I'll say it again. Kyler Murray's injury was non-contact.
But it was
maybe it's not sustainable for 10 years, but what's better? What's better? Maximizing what you have now or chasing this invisible ghost of trying to make this sustainable for 10, 12 years?
I will say the only thing I find not sustainable is the amount of times they have Jalen Hurts put his head down and go for first and short, first and goal situations on the first play. And that's the only thing I don't like seeing. Jalen Hurts does a great job of getting rid of the football. For the most part, he does a great job of protecting himself, either sliding or getting out of bounds, not really taking the big hit often. I think he does a great job in terms of doing that. The only thing that I would change right now is when you get into those first and goal from the one situations, maybe try Miles Sanders up the middle, maybe try Boston Scott up the middle first before I have Jalen Hurts diving headfirst into the pile, because he does it enough time to sustain drives on third and short, fourth and short, whatever it might be, fourth and one, fourth and inches. That's the one thing I would look at Nick Sirianni and say, do we really need to put him in peril that often when we already know he's going to be creating plays for you in other dynamics? Yeah.
Let me just jump in here, Mark. I can't, and if either of you two guys correct me, I can't remember any quarterback ever getting hurt on a quarterback sneak. I don't think it's a dangerous play at all.
I still think it's putting him in peril, especially when we're talking about the concussion era that we're in and having his head down, so many guys jumping at him, knowing the play is coming. Jason Kelsey even says, you know what's coming. And they still get it, which is incredible. And I'm happy that it works, but I still would like maybe try something else first. Maybe the second play you try him in there, because it is a great play. It does work with great efficiency, but that's the only thing I look at that I go, maybe not so many of those. Maybe, and you're right. Not one guy jumps to mind that, they shouldn't have called that, quarterback sneak or anything like that. But just the amount of times they do it, it does give me caution when they do call it.
John, if you were an Eagle employee, you'd be fired by Howie Roseman or Arch Stenoda.
Well, that
with
goes
your
without
flippant
question.
attitude of we got to
without
go
question.
for it here. We can't legislate injury. All the Eagles think they can. So if you made that speech in the locker room, yeah, they asked you to bring in your playbook, you'd be gone. But next question for Farzy is a multiple choice. Are you ready, Farzy?
Oh boy. Okay. Go ahead.
The Eagles have gone from tied for 31st or 30th in the National Football League in sacks last year to numero uno. They now lead the National Football League in sacks this year.
Not good enough.
It is one of three reasons. Number one, the addition of Hassan Reddick. Number two, BG coming back and the fountain of youth that he's got a chance to get his most sacks ever after missing an entire year at his advanced age. Or number three, they no longer are afflicted by the presence of Derek Barnett. One of those three reasons is the reason why the Eagles are now number one in the National Football League in sacks. Which of the three is it?
These are all wonderful choices. I'm going to go ahead and say that Reddick is the biggest reason of the three options that you gave me. So I'm not going to not answer your question because I'm not a coward. I will answer your question and say Hassan Reddick is the number one of the options presented to me. But the reason I think even above Hassan Reddick, and Hassan Reddick is part of it, is the influx of talent that you've had on the defensive side of the ball in general. I think this team just being better manned has made them look a hell of a lot better. I remember the question going into the season, is Jalen Hurts the guy, was what we were all asking. And then can Jonathan Gannon really step up with the players that he's got now? Can he run a more efficient philosophy or scheme with the players he has? And the answer to that is a resounding absolutely. And I think Reddick's a big part of that. I think Kazir White's a big part of that. I think TJ Edwards' improvement has been a big part of that. I think that the guys you brought on the defensive line midway through the season, and Sue and Linval Joseph, have done a great job. The resurgence of Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat taking another step forward. With the better personnel, you have seen this entire defense take a step forward. I think that's why they're having more success in getting home whenever it is they do pressure or they win their one-on-one battles.
By the way, the Eagles lead the NFL with 49 sacks, which I think everybody knows. They passed Dallas over the past week. They are number one in sacks this season. But
wasn't that the question I just asked you, Mark?
No,
you said they were number one in sacks in the NFL.
But fans, this is the part I'm getting to, Jody. I think fans don't realize, most fans, buy players with 6 or more sacks, which is nice, but first time, let me say that again, in franchise history that has ever happened. First time, Jim Johnson? Nope. Bud Carson? Nope. Buddy Ryan? Nope. Never happened before. This is it. First time. Now, this team, there's so many records on this team. I love Miles Sanders, when he got asked what's more important to you, 1,000 yards or 10 touchdowns, and his answer was Super Bowl. I love that answer from Miles Sanders. I tell Jody all the time, and he gets worked up about it. Jonathan Gannon doesn't care about sacks. He likes them because they're always good. It's always good to sack the quarterback, but he doesn't care about sacks. And Jonathan Gannon has been a bit of a lightning rod for this fan base. When you hear numbers like that, why do you think he's still a lightning rod for this fan base?
Because he doesn't mean it. In all honesty, and I agree. I give all the credit for John. I was a huge skeptic. I was not a huge skeptic when it came to Jalen Hurts and the type of. I didn't expect this type of leap, but I knew he'd take a leap in this season. But with Gannon, I was like, I don't know. The idea of not even bend but don't break, but just keep on, keep your corners off the line of scrimmage. You don't have to blitz as many times as everyone's saying. Like that to me just shows that you couldn't force teams into mistakes. Now with the upgraded talent that he has had, I think there's no secret that Howie Roseman has his fingerprints on this team and has done the most with this team that we have seen in recent memory when it comes to Howie Roseman as a general manager or director of player personnel when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles. Whether that's getting Sue and Linval Joseph on that defense or whether that's trading for A.J. Brown to come into the mix with Jalen Hurts, I think he has done a phenomenal job this year of upgrading the talent on both sides of the ball. But just specifically to Gannon, to stay on point, this is a guy that I think hasn't tweaked his philosophy a lot. I think what he has done is simply gotten better talent. And in most cases, because we still have seen Hassan Reddick drop back into coverage, not a lot, but we've still seen that happen. And that's not something I'm ever a fan of, but I guess you got to keep the quarterback guessing.
Yeah,
and he has had a lot of success.
That's what I
being
do
able
to
to get
you.
the quarterback.
Got to keep you guessing.
Got to keep me guessing.
Every once in a while. Every once in a while.
I think John and Mark have both made the point it takes a village to get sacks.
There you go.
As far as he's saying they need the entire team, and John pointing out how many different guys
Right.
have 6 sacks. It has been truly a team effort by the Eagles this year. All right, flipping back over to the offensive side of the ball, and that guy who's taking the snaps these days, Jalen Hurts, who is now only the leader in the MVP standings if you go by wagering markets as of right now. There isn't anybody in the Delaware Valley except maybe OG Wade, a WIP caller, who believed that Jalen Hurts was going to be the MVP of the NFL this year. How high is high? How much is he going to cost the Philadelphia Eagles when this season is over and done with? Mark, John and I have been doing this since the preseason. Well, you know, if they could do a contract extension, which they can't, they might be able to get a reasonable number, $25 million. 30 million,
no.
35 million,
No.
40 million, 45, $50 million a year.
Yeah.
That's the neighborhood that he's played himself into. How big a conversation is that going to be this offseason?
Well, I mean, it's going to be a huge conversation. And how big's the number going to be? You're getting close, damn near close to 40 when you're talking about this player, and then it'll be restructured and blah blah blah. But the number that's going to come out is going to be ginormous.
He's going to leave 40 in the dirt.
Oh.
You got to get past that. He's going to leave 40 standing still. It's going to be closer to 50 than it is to 40.
Probably right in that regard. I mean, he has put the Kyler Murray. What is Kyler Murray at? 25, 30 million?
Oh, he's way.
What is
232 over 5 years?
Okay. Good Lord.
Yeah.
Yes. So he's going to put that number in the dirt. I remember looking at the contract, not remember the numbers off my head and be like, well, Hurts is going to top that because of the way he's played. I mean, the conversation was whether or not he's the guy. I mentioned earlier, whether or not he's the guy, whether or not he can be the franchise quarterback. Like even franchise quarterback, you talk about putting things in the dirt. That conversation is sealed. There are daisies over top of it right now, and a beautiful headstone saying now the once and future franchise quarterback of the Eagles. And talking about a guy. Now, look, when you say great, you automatically go with history and the way guys are playing. But the bottom line is, if you're just talking about this season isolated, Jalen Hurts is a great quarterback. And there's nobody else in the NFL right now that I think anyone in their right mind would take over Jalen Hurts with the way he has played this season. You want to talk about all-time betting on yourself type of moments, and true, Jalen Hurts didn't have control because not a first-round pick and all that. But, man, if you were to go into this season and say, is this guy going to be a top 5, top 3, even the best quarterback in the NFL? People might even say you're crazy. An MVP candidate, people might even say you're crazy. But to talk about the numbers attached to it, I can't think of a better performance for a quarterback in a clutch situation of his career to get that big money contract than what Jalen Hurts has put on the field. Joe Flacco did it with the Super Bowl when he bet on himself before the season, ended up winning the Super Bowl and cashed in. And I know that's not a name people want to associate to Jalen Hurts, and rightfully so. But just in terms of contract, wow, it's hard to do more than what Jalen Hurts has done this year.
All right, Mark, I brought up one guy who takes a lot of hits, and you brought up an interesting point in saying that the personnel has changed so dramatically on defense. And you're right, by the way. I mean, when the Eagles were struggling, they didn't change the scheme. They went out and got Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh. So when we talk about the MVP in this league, and it should be Jalen Hurts, the MVP of the Philadelphia Eagles, Howie Roseman.
Well, I think it's a slam dunk that he's executive of the year. I mean, just think about this for a second. The Eagles were the first team in the NFL to clinch a playoff spot. Oh, and by the way, they have a top 5 pick next year. Like right now, like if that's not the sugar on top of, or the sugar in the cake, when it comes to being executive of the year, I don't know what is. And Ndamukong Suh coming in here. Ndamukong Suh, Brandon Graham, and Fletcher Cox all played 46% of the snaps on Sunday against the Giants.
Well, it helps that you're up 100 by second quarter.
It certainly does. Yeah. It certainly does. But just think about that from a conditioning standpoint for Ndamukong Suh. It only played his, third game with the Eagles to this point? That's pretty impactful. And that is all because Howie Roseman was aggressive. Charles Gardner-Johnson gets signed by this team, and he's leading the NFL in interceptions. He's never played free safety before, and then he gets hurt. Oh, and then, by the way, Reed Blankenship comes in and plays more than serviceable as he comes in. And then we'll see what happens next, whether that's Anthony Harris, whether that's Kayvon Wallace, whatever. But he just keeps on making moves.
Well, my point bringing that up, and obviously it's a bit facetious. He's not going to be the MVP or anything. This team's about personnel. They have better personnel than everybody else. Nick's done a great job as a coach. We talked about Jalen. The defense is tremendous everywhere. Hassan Reddick, the Robert Quinn trade was not a good one. So he's not 100%. But this team's about personnel. And now he's ring shopping, and he's bringing in a 36-year-old punter because guys are ring shopping. So Joseph wants to be here. Sue wants to be here. Brett Kern wants to be here. Who knows? Anthony Harris is probably going to come back. These guys are all ring shopping because this team is so good and the personnel is so good. So I think it's interesting only because if you rewind back to the preseason, I mean, I talked about lightning rods with Jonathan Gannon. Howie's probably even a bigger lightning rod. But man, this has been a season for the ages personnel-wise.
Yeah, you look at the 2017 season, every offseason acquisition was a hit. I mean, even the in-season acquisition of Jay Ajayi did a great job for that team. Chris Long made a huge play in the game Carson Wentz got hurt and helped, propel the Eagles to the rest of the season that they were just fantastic in. And obviously to the Super Bowl, LeGarrette Blount was a huge acquisition for that team. I mean, really all across the football field. The depth obviously brought in as well. I mean, Halapoulivaati Vaitai was your starting left tackle in that game, having himself a hell of a season, coming in for Jason Peters. Darren Sproles, next man up. Corey Clement, all of a sudden, put in a great rookie campaign and an even better Super Bowl. So, yeah, depth was incredible. This season, you could say the same thing. So when you talk about maybe most important person with the club right now is probably Howie Roseman for what he's been able to pull together with this team and with this quarter. Because Jalen Hurts had a huge step forward. A.J. Brown is here. Jonathan Gannon has had a huge step forward with this defense. Hassan Reddick is here. Continued help along the way, defensively speaking, with this team. So, yeah, Howie Roseman, probably the most important person at that NovaCare complex.
All right, you guys have set me up to be the rain on the parade guy.
I'll
accept my responsibility.
It
will not turn down the responsibility. How many extensions has Howie Roseman gotten done with present-day Philadelphia Eagles who could help them going forward? Because this has been a staple of Howie's MO. He tries to pick a guy or two he thinks part of the base and part of what the building blocks are. How many's he gotten done this year?
Too good, man. Too good.
More extensions than probably, Jody, you, me, and John need combined to make it look like we got a nice head of hair. I don't know. But he's going to get a lot of them done.
He is. It's a foregone conclusion.
Here's the thing.
He calls him into the office and says, here, sign this. You think these great defensive players who have a phenomenal years are going to go, oh, sure, Howie, whatever you say. He's got none done. Zero.
There is a funny thing about Howie Roseman. This is why whenever people talk about, and you mentioned the callers he used to talk to, John, when you talk to those people, they're like, how are they going to do with that money? They can't do it with the money. The money, I know, is real, but for whatever reason with Howie, he knows how to manipulate the hell out of it to the nth degree, probably knows the cap. He has probably told people that monitor the cap at the NFL how to operate the cap. Like, that's how great what Joe Banner did with it.
And by the way, I want to give some love to Jake Rosenberg. He's a big part of that cap thing as well. But just as we're talking, Drew Rosenhaus confirms Anthony Harris is back.
Oh, boy.
Anthony Harris is back.
All right.
So there's another one. Anthony Harris is back.
Good on him. Now, there's a ring shopping guy. I certainly believe that that's the case because he might have had some other offers. Mr. Kern, no, he's been sitting out for a sick team. The first team that called and offered him a contract, he was going to come back and kick. Didn't matter if it was the Texans, he would have come back.
That's disrespect. That's a 3-time Pro Bowl punter.
Mm-hmm.
They may have gotten better.
They may have gotten better for 14 weeks.
They may have gotten better at punter.
Sean Landeta was a multi-time Pro Bowl kicker. Should the Eagles have signed him instead? Come on. When you're unemployed, you're unemployed.
By the way, it's funny you say that because I got a I hope it was a joke tweet, but somebody said, I wanted Landetta. How old is Sean at this stage?
Yeah, 50 something.
Yeah, 50
He's
something.
in his 50s. That's for damn sure.
Went to the same high school as my wife.
Really?
Oh yeah. Lock Raven High School in Glen Maryland. Yeah, they met at a Bud Light event I was doing, and they started talking. And he was just at his high school because it was when the NFL was doing the 50th anniversary of the Super Bowl, and they were giving gold footballs to every high school. And he said, "Here's a picture of me at my high school giving the gold football." And my wife goes, "Is that Lock Raven?" And he goes, "Yeah,
Raven. How does she not know that Sean Landetta went to her high school? That's a bad job by her.
Oh, it's a horrendous job. My wife is reading her Kindle as I watch. She doesn't watch sports. She does not appreciate. She does not appreciate.
I feel your pain.
He heard cats in Farzi's house. We established that today. All right, Farzi, last thing. I ran this by, I forget which of the two guests it was yesterday. The under-over rushing yards for Justin Fields on Sunday versus the Eagles. He is averaging 75 yards a game. Pretty damn impressive. Sorry, Jalen Hurts may be the MVP, but he's not the best running quarterback in the NFL this year. That's Justin Fields. Mm-hmm. So if there's one thing Jalen might be trailing in the league in this unbelievable season, it's best rushing quarterback. He might be number 2, but number 1 they're facing this week. I set the over-under on Justin Fields' rushing yards at 74.5. So if he gets his average, it's over.
Yeah.
The improved Eagle run defense, which we're hearing a lot about, that they're that much better against the run. I think the fact that they played with leads all these last 3 weeks have kind of kept the totals of the opposition down. They're always out in front. Over 74.5 yards for Justin Fields on Sunday. Where you go?
I am going to say over.
Yes, way to go, Marc Farzetta.
Is this where Jody introduces the topic? I agree with John, and Jody goes, "You're ridiculous. How do you say that?"
I'm not ridiculous. I set the number, so I said what I thought was a very fair number.
That is fair.
I'll tell you why you're both going to be wrong.
This is what I mean. This is what I mean. Okay, go ahead. All right, what do you got?
Who did the Eagle defense in practice? And we know they don't do a lot of practicing, but when they do their walkthroughs, who are they walking through against?
Jalen Hurts.
So they're probably better prepared, except for maybe the Ravens, to play against the rushing quarterback because they do every single day in practice. That's why they're holding Fields to under 74.5 yards.
All right. Well, I looked down in your comment section here, and Crisco, I want to say Crisco, I'm on the same page, and NJ Fishing, yes, I have gotten before that I look like Nick Sirianni. Thank you. I'm his fatter, balder brother. But anyway, but when it comes to why he's going to get the over, it's because he's going to be scrambling all the live long day.
Exactly.
He's throwing into the 2 best defensive backs in the NFL. The only thing he's going to have in terms of getting yards.
All the Bears have is him running around like a nut job. That's all they have. He's going to have 235, 40. And Eagles fans, by the way, Mark, are going to lose their head. Oh, we can't stop Justin Fields from running. And you're not seeing Justin Fields every week. Don't worry about it. So he's going to run for a bunch of yards, because that's all the Bears have. And Eagles fans should know better than anybody else. +1 in the running game means +1 in the running game. There's a lot of times he isn't accounted for. Stopping the traditional running game is a lot different than stopping the +1 of a quarterback who can run. And Eagles fans should understand that by now because of Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I haven't seen the numbers of the Bears on 3rd down conversions, but just regarding this matchup, this isolated matchup, I have a feeling that we're going to be really pissed off on 3rd downs, because I feel like he's going to be able to extend a couple drives and keep drives going by using his legs, and the Eagles have everything sealed off, and the next thing you know, Justin Fields just runs for 5 yards, gets a 1st down, does that a couple of times.
And he is a phenomenal runner. He is unbelievable. He's closer to Lamar Jackson than Jalen Hurts. Jalen's a great runner. Don't get me wrong, but he's a different runner than Lamar Jackson and Justin Fields. These guys are so athletic, and he set the record. He set the record a couple weeks ago for most rushing yards by a quarterback in the regular season. Colin Kaepernick still has it in the postseason.
Postseason, right?
Yeah. Nonetheless.
Fields is fast, but I say they hold him to under the 74.5. We'll see on Sunday. Farzy, good deal. Go out and take a bike ride, okay, bud?
Will do. Great seeing you guys. Talk to you soon. See you.
Thank you,
That
Mark.
is Marc Farzetta of the Farzy Show and the host of the Eagles pregame show right here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. John McMullen and Jody McDonald, your Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. Next hour, we've got Hunter Brody joining us. So the hits just keep coming here on